Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Ambassador. That film, of course, was very difficult to watch. But if that doesn't get you angry, if that doesn't make you outraged, then you have no sense of justice. You have no sense of fairness or any sense of decency. The 7 people that you see here, these are all human lives. Those are some of the bodies that you saw laying there. None of these people had to die. This did not have to happen. It should not have happened. This was totally preventable, and these people were killed not by some accident or by some misfortune. These people were killed because of very, very wrong decisions that were made by the United Nations and by the United States. And for that, I really am ashamed. So let me tell you some of the background of this. Some of you know it in great detail. Some of you may not know it at all. The attack on February 9 occurred just as we were about to have a session in Washington discussing this. We were all very shocked to find out about it, but I can't say that we were completely surprised, because this had been coming for some time. The possibility of this had been coming for some time. All of these people had been in Iraq for quite some time at Camp Ashraf, which was a camp that had developed over a 20-year plus period. It was a camp that was a decent place to live, mostly made decent by them, by their own work, by their own money. It was a place that wasn't entirely safe. There had been 2 attacks by the Iraqi military at the behest of the Iranian government. There had been 2 attacks on the facility, and people had been killed. But because it was a large space, because there were permanent structures, because there had been places built to protect against bombings, it was difficult for people to be killed at Camp Ashraf. In fact, the only way they were able to accomplish killing people at Camp Ashraf was by invading Camp Ashraf with Iraqi troops and having to mow the people down in the streets. Something that was photographed, something that could be seen, and something that the Iraqi government had to pay a very, very heavy price for. So instead of these people remaining there, being allowed to remain there, while they were being hopefully sent to other places under the auspices of the United Nations, the Iraqi government and the United Nations and the United States Department of State required that they be moved from that facility to what you just saw, something called Camp Liberty. I know the images of the people who were wounded and who died are the starkest. They're the ones that stand out. But if you have a chance to look at that video again, I'd like you to look at the structures that are part of this so-called Camp Liberty. This isn't a camp. This isn't a relocation camp. These are trailers. These are ridiculously tiny trailers that are sitting in the middle of an area that sometimes, for long periods of time, is over 100 degrees, that rains incessantly. These people are living in a concentration camp. I called it a concentration camp before they went there. And when we arrived in Paris to talk to Martin Kobler, Michael Mukasey, and I, and a group of other prominent Americans, Republicans and Democrats, Ed Rendell, the former mayor of Philadelphia and head of the Democratic Party, and Louis Freeh, the former head of the FBI, and Senator Torricelli, a Democrat. I'm a Republican. Michael's a Republican. This is not about Republican, Democrat. It's about the right thing. First thing that Martin Kobler said to me, he came up to me very, very angry, and he put his finger in my face, and he said to me, "You called it a concentration camp. You said it was a concentration camp. It's not a concentration camp." Well, you know, not only did I turn out to be right that it's a concentration camp, but it's now become a killing field. I don't know how Martin Kobler defines a concentration camp, but if you take a look at those disgusting, ratty little places where these people are being required to live, if that's not a concentration camp, I don't know what a concentration camp is. And on September 9th, it turned out to be a place in which people could just be slaughtered without any protection at all from Iraq, from the United Nations, or from the United States. In and of itself, this is an act of tremendous inhumanity. But it's worse than that. As I said, all of these people, or most of them, had been at Camp Ashraf. In 2003, I believe it was, when we invaded Iraq and attacked Iraq and deposed Saddam Hussein, all of these people in Camp Ashraf voluntarily surrendered all of their arms, their ability to defend themselves. They surrendered it to the United States military, to the United States government. And they surrendered the ability to defend themselves because they were promised protection by the United States government. The United States government gave them a promise when they surrendered their own weapons that they would act as protection for these people. To me, that's a solemn promise of my country. That's a solemn promise that we have now broken time and time again. The United States should be ashamed of itself in having broken that promise, because the United States was instrumental in requiring these people to leave Ashraf, put on tremendous pressure for them to go to concentration camp Liberty, put on tremendous pressure for 2 years for these people to move, basically threatened them, including the then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, basically threatened them that they wouldn't be delisted unless they moved. Now, what could that possibly have to do with listing or delisting? The group is either a terrorist group or it's not a terrorist group. There's either proof that they've taken part in terrorist activity within the last 5 or 10 years, or there is no proof that they took part in terrorist activity. If they move or don't move, how does that indicate one way or another if they're a terrorist group? So the pressure was enormous because the MEK had been delisted in the European Union. It had been delisted in the United Kingdom. In fact, the only 2 places left that considered the MEK to be a terrorist group was Iran and the United States. The simple fact that Iran considered them to be a terrorist group should have been the best indication that they weren't a terrorist group. That was apparent 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. This decision dragged on, and it dragged on, and it dragged on, and it dragged on. Long after, as I said, the United Kingdom, the European Union had delisted them. And then this final pressure was asserted. You know, if you don't move from Ashraf to concentration camp Liberty, we may not remove that designation. And you're going to be considered as very, very difficult people, very difficult to repatriate, very difficult to move, very difficult to find places to live. It was important to get that designation removed because one of the things that theoretically was blocking being able to move these people to other countries, as you would talk to other countries, they would say, no, 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 I mean, this group, we know they've been delisted by the EU and the UK, but this group is still listed as a terrorist group by the United States. So in negotiations with countries to accept some of these people, that would become a stumbling block. So it was really important to have that removed. So that pressure was exerted. In June of last year, the delegation that I was a part of with Judge Mukasey went to Paris and met with Martin Kobler and his designees. And we worked out a 10-point agreement that had to be met so that the people would move. And Martin Kobler assured us that they would be safer at concentration camp Liberty than at Ashraf, because it would be right near Baghdad, it would be right near the airport. I put up a picture before, if you could put it up again. I want you to look at where this is. This concentration camp Liberty is a small part of what used to be a much bigger Camp Liberty when we were there. It's in the middle of that area you see outlined in red. It's just a small little part. The rest of that area is a military encampment made up of the Iraqi military. And then right beyond it, right below where that water is, right beyond that water is the airport. So Martin Kobler made the point that this is a very secure place to be. You're basically on a military base. You're in the middle of a military base, surrounded by the Iraqi military. And you're in an area that the Iraqis keep very secure because the airport and the military is there, and there are cameras all over the place. So this will be a safe place for them to go. Safer than Ashraf. He assured us of that. He assured us of that even though the facilities looked horrible, they looked awful. And he promised us that those facilities would be fixed. He promised us that there would be water. He promised us that there'd be electricity. He promised us many, many things. And the most important thing he promised us was they'd be moved out of there very, very quickly. That they would expedite the process of finding countries for all these people to go. Every single thing I said to you, Martin Kobler has reneged on. I believe every single thing he said to us in June was a complete, absolute lie. Because he has proven himself to be a professional liar, which is unfortunate. I believe there's no choice with Martin Kobler, that if the United Nations wants to do the right thing, he should be removed immediately. He is doing the dirty work of the Iraqi and Iranian governments. He is not doing the work of the United Nations. He's not doing the work of trying to protect people who are in a vulnerable status. These people should all be declared immediately refugees. They should be all given refugee status. If they're not refugees, then what exactly is a refugee?